Okay, better? Great. Okay, so my name's Matt Campbell. I'm talking about a trend in the U.S. called web development bootcamps, one of which is called the Flatiron School, which is where I attended. I'm going to tell you all about my story, so without further ado, let's go ahead. This is a picture from our graduation. There was some alcohol involved. Okay, so yeah, the title. There's a boot camp for that. How and why web development boot camps are transforming our industry. Yeah, and that's my Twitter handle. So if you guys want to all go and follow me, I'll wait. Let's go, guys. Come on. I don't see any. God. Fine. Okay. All right. So a quick show of hands. How many people here know what a web development boot camp is? Who's heard the term? Looks like about 30%. Okay. Who's just not raising their hand? Probably most of you, just because you're shy. That's fair. Okay, so 30%. So this is really a talk about education. Higher education in the U.S. is somewhat broken. There's a huge demand for software engineers, and we're not producing nearly enough. The question is why. We're going to explore that a little bit. I like this quote. This is Nelson Mandela. You may have heard of him. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Totally agree. What education looks like today is starting to change. So let's discuss what we're going to discuss. I thought that this was a recursive sentence. So have you guys Googled recursion? Google tells you this. Did you know that? Isn't that wild? That's they think they're so clever. Jerks. Okay, so I'm going to tell you 4 stories because I'm at least 33% less efficient than Steve Jobs. Some of you may know Steve Jobs did the 3 stories commencement address at Stanford, hence the 33%. So we'll start with my story, which is my favorite part of the talk. We'll talk about higher education. We'll talk about the web development bootcamp phenomenon, and we'll talk about our story collectively. So this is me, and that's Buzz Lightyear. I'm told we look alike by a lot of people. Okay, so I'm from Ohio. Show of hands, who's heard of Ohio? It's a state. Oh, that's a lot. Nice. So I'm from a little town just east of Columbus, right about there. I went to Duke University. How many people have heard of Duke? Not bad, about half. You might have heard of us for our basketball team. We're pretty good. Go Duke. Okay, so I did some musical theater in college, so I feel pretty comfortable on stage. This is me in Greece. I'm Danny Zuko. We're doing the... Yeah, do you guys know what Greece... Yeah, sorry, all these American references. But yeah, I did some musicals. This is me in Rent. Who's heard of Rent? Sorry, I'm not going to do this the whole time, but who's heard of Rent? Okay, a handful. Okay, I live in New York currently. It's a great city, best city in the world. You guys should come visit. Sorry, Sao Paulo. New York's better. So after college, I went to work for an investment bank called Macquarie. So I studied economics in college, and I went into finance. I did that for about 3 years. This photo is the one of the headquarter buildings for Macquarie in Sydney, Australia. And it's pretty cool. It's called the Exoskeleton. Not really relevant to my talk at all. Just think it's a cool building. 1 Shelley Street. So yeah, then I decided after a few years that this is the only code in my talk. This is it. I am a programmer, but this is the only. It's not even real code. But I decided to quit, and everyone asks me, why did you leave a relatively good-paying, stable job in finance to take a huge risk and go to a 3-month program that promised you something that sounds outlandish, which is that they would do in 3 months what computer science degrees are supposed to do in 4 years, which is train a junior developer. And the answer that I give to that is basically I became firmly, I realized that if I was still working in finance by the time I was 30, I was probably going to hate myself. I didn't feel like I was creating anything. I kind of just felt like I was skimming, some fat off the top, a little bit here and there, day in and day out. And that's kind of what finance is. We can talk about this maybe at happy hour, but that's my answer. So I quit. I went to the Flatiron School, where we make cool stuff. And yeah, I'm here representing them today. Then after that, I graduated. I got kind of an internship in Quito, Ecuador, with this company, Stack Builders. It's a Ruby on Rails and Haskell dev shop. Any Haskell developers here? Like anyone play around with Haskell? Wow, 0 hands. In 1 hand. Nice. So yeah, then I came back to New York, and now I work for a startup called Blade. It's kind of like Uber for helicopters and rich people. I'm not particularly noble, but, it pays the bills. And this is one of our helicopters. It's pretty cool. Okay, so, let's get to the point here. What does my degree kind of mean for me today? I have an answer to that, and it's basically not a whole lot. My economics degree, I guess you could argue, kind of taught me how to, evaluate economic trade-offs and make decisions, I don't know. But basically, it means absolutely nothing. It didn't teach me about how kernels work, how operating systems work, how servers function, anything. So how am I a professional developer today? So now we're going to talk about higher education, and this is mostly in the U.S., but I'll be interested to hear if there are any parallels to kind of Brazil, maybe after the talk. But this is definitely a U.S. perspective. So we're going to look at like a quick 1, 2, 3, 4 punch of what's wrong with higher education. One, per student debt levels have been climbing and continue to climb pretty much every year since like the early 80s. And this chart kind of shows that. So, average debt per borrower is now climbing north of, it's approaching $35,000 per student. That's a big number. I wish my stock portfolio returns looked like this. That'd be pretty good. So the second in the 1, 2, 3, 4 punch, the percentage of students taking out loans to pay for college is also rising. So each student that takes out loans is taking out more loans, and more students are taking out loans. So that's a wicked 1, 2 right there, so it gets worse. But yeah, again, another nice stock portfolio return chart here, if that's what it were. Almost 70, I think actually now north of 70% of students are financing their education through loans. So this one is pretty bad. Student debt is climbing while the expected earnings of a bachelor's degree, so you've graduated, you have a bachelor's degree, your expected earnings has been falling. And you can see that in this chart. Again, student debt as a percentage of expected earnings is climbing, and expected earnings for graduates is stagnant or falling. So that's pretty devastating financially. And the fourth thing is relative to other goods, the cost of education is skyrocketing. This I thought was a pretty alarming chart. So, what do you guys hear about in America? We talk about how expensive things like healthcare are. I assume you guys have heard that. In America, we just had this big we tried to kind of socialize health insurance and healthcare. Didn't really work out, but the reason for that was we were trying to prevent this trend in medical care. And when you look, you compare that to college, tuition and fees for higher education, it's like not even in the same ballpark. So we're talking about a really serious problem here. So the question is, these trends are bad, but what's the kind of existing rate of return for an education? Even if all these trends aside, let's say they continue to get worse, if the expected return on education is still positive, maybe it makes sense for everyone to be taking out these loans and, to be to continue going to these college programs. So that said, we did just see costs are rising, but earnings are sliding. So let's take a look at some ROI numbers. So, again, the problem in higher education isn't with the MITs. It's not with the Harvards, the Yales, the Columbias. Those guys are doing just fine. Graduates from good schools, the top kind of 5-10%, they're doing fine. The problem is really the bottom 90%. But so this is kind of a snapshot of some really healthy return rates for, the elite top, upper crust schools in the United States. That's pretty good. Let's look at sort of the rest of the 90%. And you see numbers like this, right? Hugely flat to negative rates of return this is kind of a sampling of like a bunch of average, mediocre colleges in the United States. Keep in mind like the S&P in the past, the S&P 500 stock index has returned about 9% and change in the last, 10, 15 years. So you would have been much better off taking your tuition money and investing it in stocks and not going to college. Like, let that sink in for a little bit. You shouldn't go to college, just put it in an S&P 500, index. Don't go to University of Montevideo. Is that a Brazilian name? What is that? Okay, so we're actually probably going to skip these. It's just more bashing of higher education. Yeah, basically the point of that is more students taking on debt, and a lot of them aren't even graduating. Only 59% are graduating in 6 years. So they take on debt, they start an education, and then they don't get a degree. It's like a really bad combination. Half of all graduates said they would choose a different major. I thought that was interesting because I definitely would. If we could go back in time, this is another poll the audience, sorry, at least one more. Who would choose a different major in college? I would, definitely. Okay, not bad. So it's, anyone going to ask why kittens? Does that need an answer? I mean, come on. Okay, so now one more exercise. So think of some jobs that do not require a college education. Things like Starbucks or a restaurant or a cafe or something like that. Keep those in mind. Now, guess what percentage of college graduates in the United States end up working jobs like those, Starbucks, cafes, after college? I mean, a reasonable guess. Any guesses? Just shout out. That was all at the same time. What? 30%? Good guess. 10%? More reasonable, I would say. 50? Pretty unreasonable. Half? That's a lot. They work jobs that don't end up... That was actually the closest, though. 42%. Isn't that alarming? 42% are in jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. It's like, what? What is our education system doing? What? I just don't even know what to say about that. And the question is why? So maybe this is why. Maybe the problem is, something fundamental with, higher education in colleges, the culture, the lifestyle. In America, this is a fairly people associate college with partying and with, let's leave that up for a minute. And, with the keg stands, not necessarily in education. It's kind of a shame. So the question now is, why are people still going to college? If people know it's kind of a scam, if people know it's not affordable, if people know that unless they go to a good school, they're probably not getting a good return on their investment, why are people still going to college? Right? Everyone in America knows that college is expensive. It's getting more expensive, and an English degree is not going to be, it's not going to pay the bills. So really, it's the only option. You either go to college and you're a college graduate, or you don't go to college and you have a high school diploma. And so, there are some other factors, not just economics. Quick look at some economics. So, this is comparing basically unemployment rates of a bachelor's degree at 4% with those of, having a high school diploma. You almost half your risk of being unemployed for a, indefinite amount of time by getting a college degree. So that's nice. Additionally, you increase your expected earnings by almost 70%. So kind of interesting, even though, we just saw kind of how earnings for college graduates are sliding and, debt burdens are getting unbearable. Imagine what it's like for a high school, if you only have a high school diploma. Maybe the problem is like the middle class in America is just getting totally squeezed. Separate talk. So, there's more to it though than economics. Going to college is first class, not going to college is second class. Right? If you don't go to college, you're socially kind of ostracized. That's kind of an unfortunate truth, I would say, about American culture. Another thing, high school seniors who can't declare they're college bound are made to feel like they're failures. This isn't like a scientifically proven fact or anything, but so there are non-economic factors at play as well. Does anyone know what this background art is? Yes. Kanye West, college dropout. Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted someone to know that. Okay, so now we're on to part 3. So we've really just taken a cold, hard look at the problem with higher education. It's a big problem, but what's the relationship between that and web development boot camps? Let's take a look. So a web dev what? So first of all, what is a boot camp? I think only about 30 to 40% of you raised your hands when I asked if you even knew what it was or had heard of the term. So, boot camps are basically intensive, full-time, roughly 3 months long programs designed to train students to become entry-level, full-time developers. It's like a sprint to become a nerd. Fair? Fair. Okay, so this is a picture of a school in New York called it's basically called the trade school. But these people don't pay money. They barter their trades that they learn in school to finance being at the school. I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, back to what is a boot camp. It's kind of like if you combine all those sleepless nights you spent in college. For many of you that maybe studied computer science and you had coding projects or theses or something like that, it's like combining all of those sleepless nights spread out over a 4-year period into about a 12-week, 3-month interval, and it's pretty much every day you're working 10 to 14 hours a day, but it's really fun and enjoyable. So yeah, it's intense learning with very little wasted time and, in theory, no wasted information. You really learn the skills that you need, the skills being demanded by, in New York, for example, there's a big tech startup scene, a lot of Ruby on Rails. So a lot of these schools cater to the startup community that are hiring, full stack Ruby on Rails developers. So we don't learn, at Flatiron School, we didn't learn Golang. We didn't learn much about operating systems. We didn't write any C code, but we wrote a lot of Ruby. We wrote a lot of JavaScript, and we wrote a lot of SQL. So now you're thinking, bullshit. Can I say that? Can I cuss? Bullshit. That's what you're thinking. How is it possible that developers, which is one of the most complex jobs, I would say, it's a very complex profession, very tough, very challenging. I don't believe that it's possible to take normal people, normals, 3 months later, spit them out, and they're ready to go. They're ready to, use Git. They're ready to, write production code. Don't buy it. Fair. So let's look at something real quick. So I want to look at a side-by-side comparison of the number of hours basically put in. So I want to compare the Flatiron School, or just any kind of boot camp of that model. I want to compare that to getting a bachelor's degree at one of the premier U.S. colleges. And in this case, we're going to use NYU because it's close to home for me. So we're going to compare, these slides are called 504 versus 702, and these are not HTTP status codes. Or sorry, 720. Okay, so first, let's look at an NYU bachelor's in marketing degree. This is taken right from their website, so you can kind of look at this yourself if you'd like. To get this marketing degree, you need 12 credits. 1 credit is a course that meets approximately 3 hours per week. And a course lasts a semester, which is approximately 14 weeks. That gives you 42 hours of class time per credit. Multiply that over the 12 credits that you need. And you get about 504 hours in order to obtain a bachelor's in marketing from NYU. Contrast that with the Flatiron School, where it's a 12-week program, 6 days per week. I'm averaging Saturday and Sunday. In my experience, I worked about 5 hours a day on the weekend, sometimes more. But I'm just saying combine those into 1 day, and let's say you work 60 hours per week, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. And you end up with 720 hours. So, no real magic here so far. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of hours. Okay, so how does a boot camp work? Again, nothing too fancy here. I want to show you one slide real quick. What did I want to say about this slide? How does boot camp work? I don't actually remember. We're going to skip it. Okay, so how does the boot camp work? So this is pretty much the foundational book that the creators of the Flatiron School, who are named Avi Flombaum and Adam Enbar, they read this book and they were really kind of moved by the thesis, which is, we're doing education all wrong. It's really about the environment, bringing a diverse group of people in and making them feel comfortable to just work really hard while ensuring that they respect one another. They're nice to each other. And so that's our motto. The Flatiron School's motto is work hard, be nice. And so, when you ask, how does it work? What's it like to be there? That's what it is. This is the work hard part. We're face down in our laptops, many, many hours a day for 12 straight weeks. And then this is the be nice part. So this is a photo from something we do called Feelings Fridays, which sounds a little lame. It is at first. You get used to it. But everyone sits in a circle, and people go around at the end of the week, each Friday, and they kind of talk about the things that, the challenges they had. There's a lot of crying, a lot of people saying, I really don't think I can do this. How am I going to get past this if I can't even write, a for loop or whatever? So it gets real. But yeah, that's the be nice part. The emphasis is really on people, and making sure people are comfortable and continuing to work hard. Okay, so that's great. How has this industry grown? Another relatively short answer here. So as of 2012, beginning of 2012, there were exactly 0 web development boot camps in the U.S. As of today, there are, I think this is now more like 55. So in 2 years, it's gone from literally 0 to 60. So yeah, let's look at a kind of a graph of that. This is the number of students being produced per annum. The expectation for all of 2014 is about 6,000 students. What does that mean relative to the computer science pool coming out of universities? I thought this was pretty interesting. So 1 of every 8 computer science graduates one student will graduate from a boot camp for every 8 computer science graduates. So we're talking about a non-trivial 12.5% of basically candidates for entry-level programming jobs are coming from this brand new source of education. These brand new schools that haven't been around for more than 3 years. Really interesting. But are graduates getting jobs? Good question. So let's look at a survey that was conducted by this company called Course Report, which is basically kind of emerged to monitor the boot camp industry as a whole. So they sent this survey out to 48 programming schools, which is basically all of the dev boot camp, the dev schools that we were just looking at in the previous slides. They got 432 responses from graduates, so I would say that's statistically significant sample size. So let's look at what they found. 75% are currently employed in a job requiring skills learned in the boot camp. So I want to contrast that with the Starbucks guy slide, where we saw 42% of college graduates are in jobs that don't even require their degree. So this is obviously, we're talking about a much more focused curriculum, something that's really designed to train people with skills that they need for the jobs that are being demanded. So yeah, again, that's that same slide from earlier. 75 versus, the stat, kind of alarming. Let's talk about money. Nice topic. The average income post-bootcamp, $75,965. That's like, and that represents a 44%, I keep pressing the wrong button, 44% income growth after attending a bootcamp. So 44%. It's like you go to one of these schools, you graduate. It literally seems too good to be true. That's some serious dough. 44% raise, $75,000. What would you do with a 44% raise? And I'm not really just asking this question to be like funny or cheeky. I mean, that's always my goal, but that's what education is really supposed to be about. Right? Education, people make arguments, why go to college? Oh, it's so you can get socialized, so you can learn so you can build a network, you can kind of, learn how the real world works, and all of those are just kind of subjective arguments that may or may not actually be true. But one thing that we should always be thinking about with education is, does it make your life better? Does it improve your quality of life? And the best way we have to measure that is through how much money you're earning. So yeah, think about it. What would you do with a 44% raise? I love XKCD. One weekend messing around with Perl. I mean, this is like kind of everything I just said in one little comic. So yeah, the final part of my talk, I want to talk about our story collectively, and I guess by our I mean software developers in the United States more so, but that's okay. Just pretend you're an American, or not. Either way. Okay, so this is a slide that kind of shows. These are Flatiron School hiring partners. So these companies are kind of routinely. They have contractual relationships with the Flatiron School to basically offload a certain portion of the graduates every time a class comes about. And look, there's some pretty good names on this. Venmo. I don't know if you guys use Venmo. The New York Times, Constant Contact, Etsy, Handybook. These are pretty prominent startups for the most part in New York City and the USA. So what's going on here? Why are these well-known graduates hiring? Why are these well-known companies hiring bootcamp graduates? Do they just have like a soft spot for people that had an early life crisis and decided they wanted to not work in finance anymore? Probably not. Probably not what's going on there. So what is going on? This is the invisible hand. You guys know Adam Smith, economics. Show of hands. Great. So it's an economic. It's really at the end of the day for a lot of these companies. We're talking about an economic trade-off, which is cool. So let's look at kind of a made-up example, but this is subjectively what we hear or what the Flatiron School hears from employers time and again. So you're really getting 5 devs for the price of 4. So let's look at what I mean. A full-time offer for a brand new Flatiron grad in the New York area is roughly $70K. So these are grads who haven't done an internship, have no work experience. They're probably joining at an apprentice level. And $70K is kind of the going rate in New York City for even the most junior developers because it's so expensive to live in New York City. So, full-time offer is $70K. There's also, the Flatiron School also has some internship arrangements with companies where the companies agree to take the graduates, do an internship program for 3 months, and basically turn them back into, spit them back out to the market, or they retain them, one of the two. And, these salaries after the 3 months worked, most of these graduates are getting something in the realm of $90,000 per year. So, pretty big premium after that 3 months of hands-on training. So according to the market, if a company hires a grad for $70K, they have a dev worth $90K after 3 months. So a lot of these companies are looking at it and saying, we'll hire, 2, 3, 4 grads at a time. We'll bring them onto our team. We'll train them, directly with our engineering team for 3 months. And after those 3 months, we've basically got experienced developers, and we're still paying them $70,000 instead of $90,000. So company A hires 4 devs for $90K each. These are some more experience. They've done an internship. They end up with a dev team of 4 people, 4 juniors at least, and a cost base of $360,000, 90 times 4. Company B hires 5 graduates directly out of school for $70,000. They now have 5 after 3 months, important caveat, but after 3 months, they have 5 experienced developers with a cost base that's $10,000 cheaper. So you guys have probably all worked on sort of teams. You probably can imagine the value of having an extra developer at all times. A team of 5 instead of a team of 4. That's a huge difference, and it's less money. So this is kind of the story we hear, the Flatiron School hears time and again from companies that are hiring grads directly out of the program. 5 devs is greater than 4. 350 is less than 360. So this is a dramatic oversimplification, but just an illustrative example. But why do we care? Why do we care? That's probably why companies care. That's a nice economic explanation for the hiring patterns. But what does this really matter to us? We don't care about costs. It's all about teams, right? Software doesn't get made anymore by Linus Torvald by himself, deciding that he's going to open source the first version of Linux. He probably didn't even make the first version of Linux by himself. You guys are professionals for the most part. You understand how important having a good team is to delivering features, to getting your job done. No, you guys aren't. Are you guys still mad? Are you still mad? Who's mad? Damn. Okay. I was thinking about using a different team, but the days of isolated developers are gone. We as software developers have become too important for the businesses that we're a part of. I mean, how many of you get pulled into sales meetings, marketing meetings, business development meetings, to kind of help guide the conversations, the features that they want to deliver? Probably most of you. And with respect to teams, Bootcamp graduates are a diverse group. The average age is 29 of a graduate. That means that, on average, a graduate has had about 6 or 7 years of life experience, in most cases working in a totally different industry, totally different workflow, totally different background. And it's kind of interesting how that has become a point of attraction for companies hiring graduates. They love the fact that they're getting, also 38% of graduates are women. I think we're going to look at that right now. 38% are female. The Flatiron School has kind of a strict rule about all their classes being 50% male, 50% female, which is fantastic. Average age is 29, like I was saying. For comparison, today the software industry, this is in the U.S., it's probably lower here, is composed of only 16% women. That's a problem. And I like this quote. It didn't really fit that well, but, we're not a team because we work together. We're a team because we respect, trust, and care for each other, right? These it feels like maybe kind of a soft, not as can't feelings, oh my God. But, this stuff is real, right? This is, people don't work. Have you guys heard of, what's the guy's name that gives TED Talks about, who wrote Predictably Irrational? Who's the guy that wrote Predictably Irrational? Anyone know? No, that's not right. I would have said so. Anyway, he talks about how like he's done some studies. Money isn't really the thing that motivates people at the margin at the end of the day. It's some of these non-financial benefits that people get, particularly how connected they feel to the work that they're doing and the people that they're doing it with. Okay, so what does all this mean for your career? So I think this is kind of an interesting take. So, what happens pretend you're American. What happens in 10 years when the bootcamp trend has kind of matured? Boot camps, there's maybe hundreds to thousands of boot camps across the United States producing tens of thousands of, junior level software developers. It has totally transformed at least the bottom layer of the workforce. All of these junior graduates kind of flooding the market. What does that mean for the people that were there before? What does that mean basically for you guys who have been doing this for a while? And really I think that the question is, what does it mean to be a senior developer? Now, you can be a senior developer just by being competent, right? If you're a competent, relatively skilled, experienced Ruby on Rails developer, you can probably bill at a senior rate. At least in the US, this is pretty true. That is probably going to change. So, just some food for thought. What does it mean to be great at your job when today you can be incredibly sought after and well paid just for being competent? That's the end. Thank you. I would like to... Okay, so if you guys have any questions or comments or you disagree with anything I said, I would love to hear it. Yeah, so... if you have any perspective about... Yeah. Does he have a mic?
Hi.
Hello.
Do you think someone that already graduates should do a bootcamp?
Can you repeat that?
Someone that already graduates should do a bootcamp.
Someone who already graduated college?
College.
That's what I did. I mean, that's what most people do. They've gone to college, they have a bachelor.
But in the same area.
Oh, at the same time?
Same area.
Same area. Oh, if they studied computer science, maybe? Yeah. In the process of researching for this talk, I found that actually the unemployment rate for new computer science graduates in the U.S. is actually higher than the average. And there's some speculation about why that could be. And, I think at the end of the day, it's something like, the average is something like, I think we saw on that slide, it's like 4% for bachelor's degrees. And for, computer science related degrees, it's closer to about 8%, 7.8%, which is almost double. And everyone's like, what? Why? Like, computer science is a highly demanded field. What's going on there? And the idea is that there's this disconnect between what you're learning in school and the skills that you need to be a Ruby on Rails developer at a startup. So, yeah, we had a couple of computer science majors in our class at Flatiron School. It just depends.
Here. Hello.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, great talk.
Thank you.
I dropped college, so I totally believe on that kind of education.
Very cool.
And I'm just wondering how much does it cost to go to a boot camp for 3 months?
Great question. Did everybody hear the question? Can you guys? Okay. So the Flatiron School used to cost $10,000 for the 3 months. It went up to 12. I paid 12, and it's now 15. So it's kind of inching up a little bit. Maybe it's approaching some equilibrium, but let's call it $15,000. The average college tuition for 1 year in the U.S. is $50,000 for 1 year. So yeah.
That's amazing.
How are the dropout rates for students on boot camps?
I don't have any data.
And the failure rates too. People that go to a boot camp and don't get a job.
Sure. So it depends on the boot camp. I think we saw a slide that the placement rate is, I don't know if this was actually in one of the slides, but it's on average it's north of 80-85% for the industry. The Flatiron School being kind of one of the first, and I would argue the best, of the group of schools, their placement rate is 95%. Very, very high. But it's also very selective, right? They don't really accept people that they're not convinced are going to really work hard and are kind of cut out to go through the process. What was your other question? Failure rate? Dropout rates. We had one person in our class of 40 drop out. We were the fourth batch of Ruby on Rails graduates, and this person was the first person to ever drop out, ever. So that would be one in about 200 people drop out.
Hello, here, on your right.
Hello.
I'm curious if you have heard about boot camps in other knowledge fields besides software development.
I have. Well, I've heard of iOS boot camps and other kind of software-related boot camps. I've heard of user experience, UI UX boot camps, in New York at least. I've heard of big data boot camps. So yeah, it's a great question because it seems like this boot camp model is starting to spread to many other areas of, many other skill sets, particularly kind of those related to tech. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Right now, it seems to be dominated around software engineering, but it'll be a fun five-year horizon.
Hey, Matt.
Here.
Hello.
Do you guys have any intention or plans to bring your bootcamp to Brazil?
The Flatiron School does not. They have two campuses, one in Manhattan, one in Brooklyn. So expanding internationally is pretty challenging, as you can probably imagine. But I've heard accounts of schools popping up in other countries. I heard that one is popping up in Colombia. What's it called, Sebas? See here? What? Yeah, Make It Real. Has kind of just opened up in Colombia. But I don't know of any in Brazil, but probably not too long, I would think.
Hey, Matt, right here. Here.
Hello.
Yay. I would like to know about government regulation over boot camps in the U.S. How is it?
I'd have no idea, sorry.
Okay. I heard the Canada is having some kind of regulation talks, so there's nothing like it on the U.S. right now.
Not that I know of. I mean, they pay taxes.
Okay, awesome.
That's all I got for you. Any more questions? Oh, it's Ben.
It's me.
Hey, Ben.
So, college and a boot camp have different goals, right? A college's goal is to give you the background knowledge to a variety of disciplines, the harder stuff, the computer science stuff, the difficult bit to prepare you for a lifelong career, right? A boot camp is 3 months to put you into a job that might get you through the next 2 years before the technology changes and now you've got nothing that you learned that is useful anymore. Do you think you said that college had a problem with things like drinking, because mostly it's sort of 18 to 22-year-olds who go to college. Do you think perhaps there's a benefit in switching the order of the two, doing a boot camp type thing first to get you into the start of a career, and then using a harder college degree later when you're more mature and can absorb the more difficult material when you actually need it?
Great question. I personally absolutely agree with that. When I look back at my college experience, I think, I studied economics because a lot of people did it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Now I know I like computer science, I like programming. And now I have kind of the idea of going to a master's program at some point later on in my career. Yeah, I think going to a boot camp first, getting work experience, getting exposed to what it's like to be in the real world, a working, young adult, and then making the investment, if necessary, to go and pursue higher education is totally reasonable and probably superior to reversing, the status quo now. Unfortunately, culturally, the status quo is the status quo, and that's after high school, you figure out if you're going to go to college. And if you don't go to college, people are like, oh, why is he or she not going to college? They must not be that clever. But yeah, I mean, there was some other stuff in your question, but maybe we can talk about it after.
Alô, pessoal, a gente vai ter mais o último coffee agora. Então, mais perguntas, chamem o Matt no canto, conversem com eles aqui, com ele aqui. A gente volta às 4h em ponto. Não esqueça de passar na Casa do Código, o pessoal que está aprendendo, muitos livros, muitos autores. Então, vamos lá, pessoal.